Of course. Here is the text with all the timestamps removed, formatted into a coherent narrative. Good day. This is Trace of Fate, a channel where stories are not just told but live. Are you ready to be surprised, worried, and empathize? Then you're at the right place. The dusty road looped between rickety fences, and painted wagons moved along it like bright beads on a thread. The caravan appeared at dawn when the village was just waking up, and the roosters were screaming so desperately, as if warning of something important. Marussia stood at the well with a bucket in her hands and watched the multicolored carts, one after another, turn onto the meadow behind the outskirts. The girl was 22 but had never married. There had been suitors, but all of them were somehow wrong, boring. Her father swore, her mother sighed, and Marussia continued to embroider towels and dream of something more than this sleepy village, where every day was like the last. "The gypsies have arrived," shouted the neighbor Dunyasha, running out of her house with unbraided hair. "The Baron himself is with them." Marussia grinned. Every year gypsy caravans passed through their village, but they usually stayed briefly, a day or two at most. They showed horses, told fortunes for women with cards, sold pots and ribbons, and then disappeared as suddenly as they had appeared. But this time, something was different. The caravan set up a real camp with campfires, tents, and a horse corral. By evening, the entire meadow had turned into a small city full of music, laughter, and the mysterious twinkle of lights. The air was filled with the smell of smoke, roasted meat, and some unfamiliar spices. The sounds of guitars and violins echoed over the village, making hearts beat faster.
"Don't go there," her mother said sternly, setting the table. "I know these gypsies. Before you know it, they'll swindle you. And a girl has no business there. It'll only ruin your reputation." Her father grunted in agreement, but Marussia saw the curiosity in his eyes, and she herself couldn't tear her thoughts away from the camp at the edge of the village. The next day, half the village crowded around the encampment. The gypsies had started trading, laying out copper bracelets, intricate beads, embroidered shawls, and silver rings with mysterious patterns. An old woman in a colorful headscarf told fortunes with cards, promising the women rich suitors and long lives. The men showed horses so beautiful, spirited, and proud that it took your breath away. The foals reared, their manes flying in the wind, and the gypsy horsemen controlled them so easily, as if the horses understood their every desire without words. Marussia came closer around noon when the sun was high and the meadow was less crowded. She wore her best sundress, blue with red embroidery on the hem, which she had embroidered herself all winter. She tied her hair in a tight braid and fastened it with a new ribbon. Her mother saw her off with a disapproving look but said nothing, knowing it was useless. Marussia wandered among the wagons, examining the goods, listening to the rapid gypsy speech she didn't understand but which fascinated her with its melodiousness. Children with dark eyes ran between the adults, laughing and playing their own games. Women in bright skirts cooked something over the fires, and men argued about horses, shouting over each other. And suddenly, she heard a violin. The music was so sad and beautiful at the same time that Marussia froze in place. The melody told a story without words, about long roads, lost love, freedom, and longing. She followed the sound, spellbound, not noticing how people parted before her, and she came out into a small clearing behind the carts. There, leaning against the wheel of a painted wagon, stood a young man with a violin. He played with his eyes closed, and it seemed the whole world had disappeared, leaving only the music, the sunlight in his black hair, and something unspeakably sad in every note. When he opened his eyes, Marussia realized what was happening. His gaze was as dark as night and piercing, as if he could look straight into her soul. A slight smirk played on his lips. He knew the impression he was making, and it amused him. "Did you like it?" he asked, and his voice was velvety, with a light accent that made every word special. Marussia wanted to say something cheeky and witty, but the words stuck in her throat.
She just nodded, feeling the blush spread across her cheeks. He laughed quietly, a laugh that sent shivers down her spine, and came closer. Up close, he was even more handsome, tall with a proud posture, dressed in a white shirt and a vest embroidered with gold threads. A thin gold chain glittered around his neck. His hands were strong, but his fingers were long and musician-like. "I am Mikhail," he introduced himself, "son of Baron Andrei. And you?" "Marussia," she exhaled barely audibly. He took her hand and kissed her fingers lightly, a touch almost weightless but that burned more than fire. Marussia felt the ground disappear from under her feet. "Marussia," he repeated, as if tasting the name. A beautiful name for a beautiful girl. She knew she should pull her hand back, turn around, and leave. Any decent girl would do that. But her legs seemed rooted to the ground, and her heart was pounding so loudly she thought it could be heard across the entire area. "Is that how you always look at girls?" Marussia finally found her voice, trying to sound calm. Mikhail laughed, and his laughter was so sincere that she involuntarily smiled back. "No," he said seriously, "only the special ones." "Am I special? I can see it. How do you know? We just met. Our people have a gift for seeing people through and through." He winked. "You're not like the other girls here. There's a fire in you. You're suffocating in this village, aren't you? Am I right?" Marussia shuddered. How could he know what she was afraid to admit, even to herself? The very thoughts that came to her at night when she lay in the dark, dreaming of another life. She didn't answer, but Mikhail put a finger to her lips. "Don't deny it. I see the way you look at our camp. You want freedom. You want roads, new places, adventures." He was right, and it was terrifying. Marussia took a step back. "I have to go. My mother is waiting." "Then come tomorrow," said Mikhail. "In the evening we're having a celebration. There will be music, dancing, a fire reaching to the heavens. Come, Marussia. I promise you won't regret it." She didn't answer, just turned around and quickly walked away, feeling his gaze on her back. All the way home her head was spinning, and the sound of his violin echoed in her ears. At home her mother immediately noticed her strange state. "What happened? You're all flushed." "It was hot," Marussia lied, lowering her eyes. But in the evening, lying on her bed, she couldn't sleep. Mikhail's face stood before her eyes. His voice sounded in her ears. "Come tomorrow." The next day passed in a blur. Marussia helped her mother in the garden and swept the floors, but her hands did everything mechanically, and her thoughts were far away. "Have you fallen in love?" Dunyasha said when they met at the well. "I can see it in your face." Marussia wanted to deny it, but her friend knew her too well. "With the man from the camp," she admitted quietly. "Mikhail, the Baron's son." Dunyasha gasped and grabbed her arm. "Marusenka, come to your senses. A gypsy is not for us. They'll leave, and you'll be left with a broken heart. Everyone knows how they swear love today and are gone tomorrow." "I know," Marussia nodded. "I understand everything, but he's just not like that. When he looks at me, I feel alive, for real, for the first time in my life." Dunyasha shook her head but said nothing. What could she say? In the village, everyone lived the same path. Marry a neighbor's boy, have children, work in the fields and at home, grow old, generation after generation. In the evening, Marussia told her parents she was going to Dunyasha's. Her mother frowned but let her go, and Marussia went not to her friend's house but to the meadow where the campfires of the caravan were burning. The celebration was in full swing. Gypsies danced around a huge fire. Flames shot into the dark sky, sparks flying like stars. The music was so passionate, so alive, that it made you want to scream and laugh. Women in bright skirts spun and danced, their bracelets and necklaces jingling. Men clapped their hands and shouted something in their language. Marussia stood on the edge, captivated by this wild, beautiful spectacle, and suddenly saw Mikhail. He was sitting by the fire with his violin, and when he played, everyone fell silent. Even the fire seemed to freeze, listening to his music. The melody was different from yesterday, not sad but passionate, calling for life to be lived to the fullest. When he finished, their eyes met across the fire. Mikhail stood up and came to her, parting the crowd. "You came," his eyes shone. "I knew you would." "How?" "Because you're just like me," he replied. "Not by blood, but by spirit. Can you feel it?" She could. God, how she could feel it. It was as if something inside her had awakened after a lifelong slumber. "Will you dance with me?" Mikhail held out his hand. Marusia looked at his palm and realized in that moment that if she took his hand, her life would never be the same again. But how could she refuse what she had always dreamed of? She placed her hand in his, and Mikhail smiled in a way that lit up the whole world. He led her to the fire, and something incredible began. Mikhail danced as if he were born with music in his blood. He led Marusia by the hand, spun her, pulled her close, and let her go, and she followed him, forgetting everything in the world. The gypsies clapped their hands and cheered them on. The music grew faster, more and more passionate. Marusia had never danced like this at village holidays. The girls there danced sedately or timidly shuffled on the sidelines, but now her body moved on its own, as if it knew some ancient rhythm. Her skirt flared around her legs, her braid came loose, her hair spilled over her shoulders. Her cheeks burned, her heart raced, but Marusia didn't want to stop. She threw her head back and laughed, feeling truly free for the first time in her life. When the music finally died down, Mikhail didn't let go of her hand. He led Marusia away from the fire, into the darkness behind the wagons, where it was quiet and smelled of night herbs. "You dance like a gypsy," he said, admiration in his voice. "Where does that come from in you?" "I don't know," Marusia confessed, catching her breath. "It's never been like this before. It's as if something opened up inside me." "That's your true self." Mikhail stood very close. She felt the warmth of his body. "You've been hiding all your life, playing the role of an obedient village girl, but inside you there's a fire." He raised his hand and carefully brushed a lock of hair from her face. The touch was so gentle it took Marusia's breath away. "Mikhail, she began but didn't know what to say. "Shh." He pressed a finger to her lips. "No words. Words spoil everything." And then he kissed her. Marusia had been kissed before. The clumsy Petka from a neighboring yard had tried behind the barn, but this was completely different. Mikhail's kiss was like fire, like a storm, like falling into an abyss. She wrapped her arms around his neck, pulling him closer, and the whole world disappeared. They stood embracing, the wind rustling in the leaves around them. Distant music could be heard from where the celebration continued. The moon emerged from behind the clouds, flooding everything in a silvery light. "Stay with me," Mikhail whispered into her hair. "Let's talk a little longer." They sat on the grass, leaning against the wheel of a wagon. Mikhail held Marusia by the shoulders and she pressed against him, feeling how calm and right it was to be with him. "Tell me about yourself," she asked. "About your life. What is it like in the caravan?" Mikhail smiled. "Free, difficult. We are always on the road, always moving. In spring we go north, in summer we trade at fairs. In autumn we go down to the sea, in winter we sometimes stop in big cities." "That's wonderful," Marusia admired. "And lonely," he added quietly. "You don't put down roots anywhere. No home, no family in the usual sense. Only the road, only the caravan. The locals fear us, distrust us. We're always strangers." Such sadness sounded in his voice that Marusia squeezed his hand. "I think we are all strangers," she said. "Even in my village I feel out of place. Everyone around knows what they want from life. And I want something else. But I don't understand what—" "You want to live," Mikhail answered simply. "To truly live, not just exist. I saw that in you at first sight." They talked until late at night. Mikhail told her about distant lands, about cities with white stone churches, endless steppes, and the sea that Marusia had never seen. She listened with bated breath, bright pictures forming in her imagination. And then she told him about her own boring, measured life, about how every day was like the last, about dreams that seemed unattainable. "Come with me," Mikhail suddenly said. Marussia froze. "What?" "When we leave, come with a caravan. I will teach you everything. How to live on the road, how to really dance, how to be free." Marussia's heart leaped at this crazy idea, to abandon everything, her parents, her home, her familiar life, and leave with a man she had known for only 2 days. "I can't," she whispered. "It's impossible. Why? My parents, my home. I can't just leave everything." "You can," Mikhail insisted, "if you truly want to. The only question is, what do you want more, to live like everyone else or to be happy?" He stood up and held out his hand to her. "Go home, Marussia, and think. We have a few more days, but know this. If you stay here, in a year you'll marry some Ivan or Pyotr, have children, and for the rest of your life, you'll regret this night." Marussia took his hand and stood up. They stood looking into each other's eyes with so much left unspoken between them. "I'll come tomorrow," she said at last. Mikhail smiled and kissed her again, briefly and gently. "I'll be waiting." Marussia walked home, her head spinning from his words. "It's madness to leave with the caravan. But then why does my heart race at the very thought? Why does my old life suddenly seem so gray and empty?" She tiptoed into the house. Her parents were asleep. She could hear her father's steady snoring. Marussia lay down on her bed but couldn't fall asleep until dawn. Mikhail's face was before her eyes, his voice in her ears. "Come with me." The following days passed as if in a fog. Marussia walked, worked, talked with her parents, but her soul was far away, in the meadow where the caravan stood. Every evening she found an excuse to leave the house and went to Mikhail. They walked beyond the outskirts where no one could see them, sat by a stream, and talked about everything. Mikhail told her about the laws of the caravan, how his people lived. He taught her Gypsy words, she laughed at her clumsy pronunciation, and he kissed her for every mistake. "My father wants me to marry the daughter of another baron," he once admitted, "for an alliance, for the good of the clan. But I don't want to. I want to choose for myself." "And who do you choose?" Marussia asked, though her heart already knew the answer. "You," Mikhail took her face in his hands, "only you, from the very moment I saw you at the well. You are my destiny, Marussia. I can feel it." She believed his every word. She believed when he swore he would never leave her. She believed when he promised to show her the whole world. She believed because she wanted to believe, because for the first time in her life she felt truly loved. But gossip began to spread in the village. Neighbors glanced sideways at Marussia. Dunyasha warned her. "They say you go to the camp every night, to that gypsy. Marussia, get a hold of yourself. People's tongues are sharp." "Let them talk," Marussia dismissed. "I don't care." But her mother did care. One evening, as Marussia was about to leave, her mother blocked her path. "Where do you go every night?" she asked sternly. "And don't lie to me, I'm not blind." Marussia lowered her eyes. "To Dunyasha's, to Dunyasha's." Her mother smiled bitterly. "Dunyasha came by yesterday and asked for you. She said she hasn't seen you in a week. Do you go to the gypsies, to that man?" Silence was her answer. Her mother grabbed Marussia by the shoulders and shook her. "Think, daughter, what are you doing? The gypsies will leave and you'll be left disgraced. Who will marry you now? People are already gossiping. Maybe I don't want to get married." Marussia broke away. "Maybe I don't need this life of yours. Work like a horse, have children, and die without seeing anything beyond my own garden." Her mother turned pale and dropped her hands. "He's fooling you," she whispered. "The cursed gypsy has bewitched you. Lord, what have we done to deserve this?" "Nobody has bewitched me," Marussia shouted. "I love him, and he loves me, and we will be together." She ran out of the house, ignoring her mother's lamentations, and ran to the meadow. Tears blurred her vision, but she ran, stumbling over bumps in the dark, until she reached the camp. Mikhail was sitting by his wagon, fixing something by the light of a lantern. Seeing her tear-stained face, he jumped up. "What happened?" Marussia threw herself into his arms and burst into tears. He stroked her hair, kissed the top of her head, whispered soothing words. "Mother found out everything," Marussia sobbed. "She says people are gossiping, that I'm disgracing the family, that you will leave me." "Never," Mikhail said firmly. "Do you hear me, Marussia? I will never leave you. I swear by all the saints." He held her at arm's length and looked into her eyes. "Then leave with me, right now. We're leaving in 3 days. I wanted to wait to give you time to think, but if it's unbearable for you here, we'll go together. Father will be against it. But I am the eldest son, he won't dare contradict me." Marussia looked at him through her tears. 3 days, only 3 days, and the caravan would be gone. Now she had to make a decision that would determine her entire life. "I'm afraid," she admitted. "I'm afraid too," Mikhail smiled. "But I'm not afraid with you. I'm ready to face anything with you." He held her tighter, and in that moment, Marussia decided, yes, she would leave. What did she have to lose here? Only condemnation, gossip, a life in which she was suffocating. And there, freedom, love, the whole wide world. "All right," she exhaled. "I will go with you." Mikhail closed his eyes in relief and held her so tightly she could barely breathe. "My brave girl," he whispered. "My Marussia, you won't regret it, I swear to you." They stood for a long time, embracing under the stars. Then Mikhail led her to the edge of the village. It was too dangerous to go further, they might be seen. "Gather the essentials," he instructed. "Don't take much, it's not needed on the road. And not a word to anyone, understand? Not even Dunyasha, or they won't let us go." Marussia nodded. They kissed goodbye, long, passionate, as if it were the last kiss of their lives, though it was actually the first kiss of their new life together. The next 3 days were torture. Marussia tried to behave as usual to avoid suspicion. She helped her mother, worked in the garden, but all her thoughts were on the escape. At night, she packed a small bundle, a change of clothes, a warm scarf, an embroidered towel she intended to take as a keepsake, and a small icon her grandmother had given her before she died. She couldn't even say goodbye, couldn't explain to her parents why she was leaving. She only knew that if she stayed, she would die, not physically but inside. Her soul would wither and fade like earth in a drought. On the last evening, her mother was preparing dinner, and Marussia looked at her, at the gray strands in her hair, the tired wrinkles around her eyes, her worn hands. She wanted to go up, hug her, say thank you for everything, but she was afraid she would cry and give herself away. "Why are you looking at me like that?" her mother asked without turning around. "No reason," Marussia lied. "Just thinking." Her mother sighed. "I hope you've come to your senses about that Gypsy." Marussia was silent, and that night, when everyone was asleep, she took her bundle and slipped out of the house. The moon shone so brightly that every blade of grass cast a shadow. Marussia walked stealthily along the familiar road, pressing the bundle to her chest. Her heart pounded so loudly she thought it could be heard throughout the village. Every rustle made her turn around, fearing someone had woken up. What if they noticed her? But the village slept. Only dogs barked occasionally in the yards, and the wind rustled in the leaves. When she reached the meadow, the caravan greeted her with silence. The fires had long gone out. There was no light in the wagons. Marussia was confused. Where was Mikhail? He had promised to wait for her by the large oak at the edge of the camp. She heard his whisper from the darkness. He emerged from behind a tree, and even in the moonlight she could see the tension in his shoulders and the fire in his eyes.
"Oh, you came?"
He hugged her so tightly it hurt.
"God, I was afraid you'd changed your mind."
"No," Marussia pressed against him. "I promised." Mikhail took her face in his hands and kissed her desperately, greedily, as if wanting to make sure she was real. "Come on," he said. "We must leave quietly. Father is asleep in his wagon, but if he wakes up, he's against it. He says you're a stranger, that you won't get used to caravan life. But he's wrong. I know you will." He led her to his painted wagon. "This is my home, and now it's yours." By that point, it was too late to change anything. Marussia climbed into the wagon. It was cramped but cozy inside, with painted walls, a low ceiling, and a wide bed covered with bright blankets. It smelled of wood, herbs, and something elusive, Gypsy. Mikhail lit a small lantern, and a soft light filled the space. He looked at Marussia, and there was so much tenderness in his gaze that it took her breath away. "Will you regret it?" he asked quietly. "Life on the road is hard. You won't always have enough to eat. You'll sleep wherever you can. People will often treat you badly." "I won't regret it," Marussia said firmly, "because you'll be there." And then he kissed her again. This kiss was different. Not desperate, but gentle, promising. Marussia wrapped her arms around his neck, feeling warmth spread through her body. That night changed everything. In the cramped wagon, under the rustle of leaves outside the window, Marussia gave herself to Mikhail recklessly, completely, forever. He was gentle and passionate at the same time, whispering words of love in two languages, his Gypsy and her native tongue. "You are mine," he said, "my wife before God, mine forever." And Marussia believed. At that moment, she believed everything. They fell asleep in an embrace, and when they woke, it was morning, and the camp was bustling with voices. The caravan was preparing to move. "Stay here," Mikhail said, pulling on his shirt. "I will go to my father and tell him you are coming with us. He will shout, but he will agree eventually. I'm his eldest son, his heir. And you are my wife now." Marussia nodded, wrapping herself in a blanket. Mikhail kissed her forehead and left. She sat in the wagon, listening to the shouts, hoarse whinnies, and creaking wheels outside. Her heart beat anxiously. What if Mikhail's father refused to take her? What if they were driven away? It was probably half an hour before Mikhail returned. His face was grim. "What did your father say?" Marussia asked fearfully. "He said I was a fool," Mikhail tried to smile, "that I was taking on an extra burden, but I insisted. You're coming with us, though you'll have to prove yourself to the caravan, show that you deserve to be one of us." "I will try," Marussia promised. The caravan set off around noon. Marussia sat next to Mikhail on the driver's seat of his wagon, her heart sinking with both delight and fear. A long, dusty road stretched ahead, leading to who knows where, and her entire old life remained behind. As they passed the village, Marussia turned around. In the distance, she could see the roof of her parents' house. "I wonder if they've woken up yet. Have they discovered I'm gone? How does Mother feel?" Anger, fear, pain. Tears welled in her eyes, but Marussia brushed them away. It was too late for regrets. She had made her choice. Mikhail silently took her hand and squeezed it tightly. Marussia gave him a grateful look and tried to smile. The first days on the road were like a dream. Marussia couldn't get enough of everything around her. The endless fields, the forests they passed, the small towns where the caravan stopped for the night. Everything was new, unfamiliar, amazing. But she quickly realized that life in the caravan was nothing like a romantic dream. The Roma greeted her with caution, almost hostility. They didn't hide the fact that they considered her an outsider who wouldn't last. "Gajo!" One of the women, a tall, black-eyed beauty, spat contemptuously. "The Baron has done something stupid, letting his son bring her. She won't last, she'll run back." Marussia gritted her teeth and remained silent. She had to learn everything anew, cooking over a fire, washing in cold river water, fixing wheels, caring for horses. Her hands, accustomed to light housework, became covered in calluses. Her back ached from the unaccustomed labor. Mikhail tried to help, but he had his own duties in the caravan, trading horses, playing music at fairs, settling men's affairs. Marussia was often left alone among the unfriendly women, but she endured, worked to the point of exhaustion, studied Gypsy customs, and tried to earn respect. And gradually, very gradually, the ice began to melt. Old Isolde, the Baron's mother, once praised her for a skillfully mended shirt. Young Raisa shared the secret of how to best light a fire in wet weather, and the small children who had initially shied away from her began running up, demanding stories. A month passed, then another. Marussia almost grew accustomed to the nomadic life, to falling asleep in a new place every night, the smell of campfire in her hair and dust on her dress. But then she began to notice something strange. In the morning she felt nauseous, dizzy, and wanted to sleep until noon. At first Marussia thought she was just tired from the unusual life. But when it continued for a week, then too she realized she was pregnant. The realization hit her suddenly, like a blow. Marussia sat by the fire, stirring a stew, and suddenly everything fell into place. The nausea, dizziness, swollen breasts. Oh my God, she was carrying a child, Mikhail's child. Her heart beat so hard it became difficult to breathe. What would he say? Would he be happy or frightened? They had been together for only 3 months. Yes, he called her his wife, but there had been no wedding, only their own oath to each other under the stars. That evening, when they were alone in the wagon, Marussia found the courage. "Mikhail, I need to tell you something." He looked up from the violin he was tuning. In the dim lantern light, his face seemed so beautiful it made her heart ache. Marussia swallowed. "I'm expecting a baby." Mikhail froze. The violin slipped from his hands and fell onto the bed. He looked at her, and various emotions flashed in his eyes: surprise, fear, something else Marussia couldn't decipher. "Are you sure?" he asked finally. Marussia nodded. Mikhail stood up slowly and approached her. He knelt, placing his palms on her stomach carefully, almost reverently. "My child," he whispered, "our child." And suddenly he smiled so joyfully that Marussia involuntarily smiled back. "Are you glad?" she asked uncertainly. "Glad?" Mikhail laughed and pulled her to him. "I'm happy. God, Marussia, you're giving me a child. We will be a real family." He kissed her face, her hair, her hands, saying something in his language. Marussia pressed against him, feeling the fear leave her, replaced by a quiet, profound happiness. But the happiness didn't last long. A few days later, Baron Andrei summoned Mikhail. They talked for a long time in his wagon, and Marussia saw how stiff Mikhail's shoulders were when he emerged. "What happened?" she asked. Mikhail was silent, and there was something frightening in that silence. "Mikhail, tell me." "Father wants us to stay in a big city for the winter," he said at last, not meeting her eyes. "He says I should meet Baron Stepan there. He has a daughter of marriageable age." Marussia felt a chill inside. "But you told your father about the baby?" "I did." Mikhail clenched his fists. "He told me to forget about you. Said you're not my wife, that there was no real wedding under Gypsy law, that I should marry Zoya, Stepan's daughter, for the sake of the clan union." "And what did you say?" Mikhail finally looked at her, and fire burned in his eyes. "That I will not marry anyone but you, that you are carrying my child, that you are my only wife, that he can disinherit me, but I will not betray you." Marussia threw herself into his arms, and he held her tightly. "Don't be afraid," he whispered. "I will never give you up, no matter what happens." But from that day on, the atmosphere in the caravan changed. The Baron stopped speaking to them. The other Roma looked at Marussia with undisguised condemnation. Even those who had begun to get used to her drew back again. "Because of you, the Baron and his son quarreled," Raisa told her. "You've brought discord into the caravan." Marussia remained silent, but everything inside her clenched in pain. She didn't want to be the cause of the quarrel, didn't want to destroy Mikhail's family. One night she said to him, "Maybe I should leave, go back to the village?" Mikhail jumped up so sharply that the wagon swayed. "What? Are you crazy? Go back where? Pregnant and disgraced? They'll tear you apart there. And what about the child? No, Marussia, don't even think about it. To hell with my father." Mikhail exploded. "I love him, but you are more important. You and our child. If we have to, we'll leave the caravan, find a place, settle down. I'll work, but we'll be together." Marussia cried. From love for him, from fear for the future, from everything at once. Mikhail held her, stroked her hair, calmed her. A few more weeks passed. Marusia's stomach began to round, and she could no longer hide her pregnancy. The caravan women looked at her differently now, some with pity, others with contempt, others with curiosity. And then something happened that changed everything. The caravan stopped in a small town for a fair. Mikhail went to sell horses, and Marusia stayed in the camp. She was washing clothes by the river when Baron Andrei approached her. It was the first time he had addressed her directly. Tall, with gray hair and piercing dark eyes, the same as Mikhail's, only cold. "Marusia," he said, his voice unexpectedly soft. "I need to talk to you." Marusia stood up, wiping her wet hands on her dress. "I'm listening." The Baron was silent, looking at her. "Do you love my son?" "Yes," Marusia said firmly. "With all my heart, and he loves you. I see that." The Baron sighed. "But love is not enough for our life, girl. Mikhail is my heir. He must marry correctly, strengthen the clan. And you? You're good, I don't argue. Hard-working, brave. But you are a stranger." "I know," Marusia said quietly. "But I cannot change who I am, and I will not give up Mikhail and our child." The Baron nodded, as if he had expected that answer. "All right, then listen to what I tell you. In a week we will reach a big city. There Mikhail is to meet Baron Stepan and his daughter. If he refuses, there will be enmity between our clans. Blood feud, understand? People will die." Marusia paled. "But I cannot force him to marry another." "You can't," the Baron agreed. "But you can leave yourself. Now, while he is at the fair, I will give you money. Arrange a place for you in a good town where no one knows you. You will give birth to the child, raise it, live in peace. And Mikhail will eventually forget." "No," Marusia shook her head. "He won't forget. And I am not leaving." The Baron's eyes flashed. "Then his blood will be on your hands." Marusia didn't sleep all night, tossing and turning on the narrow bed. Mikhail slept beside her, his arm around her waist, and she listened to his even breathing, felt the warmth of his body. The Baron's words echoed in her head. "If you don't leave, his blood will be on your hands." Was she going to start a clan war? Would people die? She imagined Mikhail with a knife in his chest, bleeding, and almost screamed in horror. By morning, the decision had matured on its own. She had to leave, for his sake, for the sake of their child, who should not grow up in an atmosphere of hostility and bloodshed. When Mikhail woke up, Marusia was already sitting by the window watching the dawn. "Didn't sleep?" He sat up, looking at her worriedly. "Did something happen?" "No," Marusia lied, forcing a smile. "It's just the baby kicking, not letting me sleep." Mikhail laughed and came over, placing his hand on her stomach. "A hero is growing," he said tenderly. "Or a heroine. It doesn't matter. The main thing is that it's healthy." He kissed her temple and began to get ready. "The fair again today. Need to sell the remaining horses. I'll be back in the evening." He said goodbye. "Maybe we'll make good money. I'll buy you a warm scarf. Winter is coming soon. We must prepare." Marusia nodded, unable to speak. When the wagon door closed behind him, she closed her eyes, holding back tears. She spent the whole day packing. Just a little, only the most necessary things. Warm clothes, some food she managed to hide. By evening, a bustle began in the caravan. The men were returning from the fair. Women cooked dinner. Children ran between the wagons. Marusia seized the moment when no one was watching and left the camp. She walked quickly, without looking back, though her soul screamed, "Go back! Don't go! Wait for Mikhail!" But she knew that if she saw him, she wouldn't be able to leave. He would convince her to stay, and then what the Baron had predicted would happen. She walked until dark, until she reached a nearby hamlet. There, she knocked on the first house where a light was on. An old woman opened the door, looking distrustfully at the stranger. "Help," Marusia pleaded. "Can I spend the night?" "I'll pay." The old woman hesitated, but her gaze fell on Marusia's rounded stomach, and her face softened. "Come in. A pregnant woman has no business on the road at such a time." Marusia was led into the hut, fed, and put to bed on the stove bench. She lay there, listening to the old couple talking downstairs in hushed voices, and thought about Mikhail. How did he feel when he returned and didn't find her? Was he looking for her now, or had the Baron already told him she had left on her own? Tears streamed down her cheeks, but Marussia wiped them away with her fist. She had to be strong for the baby. In the morning, she moved on. The old woman gave her some food for the journey and showed her the path to the main road. "There will be carts," she said. "Maybe someone will give you a ride." Marussia thanked her and left. It was the second day, then the third. Sometimes kind people gave her a lift, peasants on carts, merchants. She was moving further from the place where the caravan had stopped, further from Mikhail. After 2 weeks, she reached her village. It was early morning when Marussia entered the familiar street. Nothing had changed. The same rickety fences, the same well in the square, the same gray huts. Only she had changed. She had become different. Marussia stopped at her parents' house, gathering her courage. Then she knocked. Her mother opened the door. Seeing her daughter, she froze, turned pale, and grabbed the door frame.
"Marussia,"
she whispered.
"Is that you?" "Yes, Mother."
Marussia's voice trembled.
"I've come back."
Her mother stepped back silently, letting her into the house. Inside, everything was the same. The smell of stove smoke and fresh bread, the same icon in the corner, the same creaky floor. Her father was sitting at the table. Seeing Marussia, he slowly rose. His face was stony. "So you've come back," he said hollowly. "Your gypsy abandoned you." Marussia lowered her head. "He didn't abandon me. I left on my own." "On your own?" Her mother stepped closer, peering at her daughter, and suddenly gasped when she saw the rounded stomach beneath the shawl. "Lord, you're pregnant?" The silence was so profound you could hear the firewood crackling in the stove. "Yes," Marussia said quietly. "I'm expecting a baby." Her father sank onto the bench as if knocked down. Her mother covered her face with her hands. "Lord," she lamented. "What have you done, child? What have you done?" "I love him," Marussia said through tears. "I love Mikhail, but I couldn't stay. I would have started a feud. People would have died. I couldn't." She didn't finish, sank to the floor, and cried as she had never cried before. She sobbed, her face buried in her knees, her whole body shaking with grief. Her mother was the first to come to her senses. She sat down next to her, hugged her daughter, and held her close. "Hush, hush," she whispered. "What's done is done. Now we must think about how to live on." Her father got up and left the hut, slamming the door. But Marussia knew he would return. He wouldn't throw her out, no matter how angry he was. Blood was blood after all. And so she remained in her native village. Her belly grew, and it became impossible to hide the pregnancy. Of course, the village exploded with gossip. "Have you seen? She's back, pregnant. A gypsy's got her fill of wandering, I suppose. What a disgrace." And her parents took her back. What else could they do? Their own flesh and blood. Marussia tried not to leave the house again, helped her mother, prepared for the birth, knitted tiny booties and sewed undershirts, and at night she cried into her pillow, remembering Mikhail, his laughter, his music, his kisses. The child was born on a frosty February night. The birth was difficult and long. Marussia screamed, clutching her mother's hand, and thought she would die. But by dawn, the midwife lifted a tiny, wrinkled baby and joyfully announced, "A boy! A healthy, strong boy." Marussia was given the warm little bundle, and she looked at her son's red, crumpled face. He had black hair and dark eyes, just like Mikhail's. "Andrei," she whispered. "I will call you Andrei after your grandfather." Little Andrei grew by leaps and bounds. He had gypsy features, dark skin, black hair, huge dark eyes with long lashes. In the village, he was looked upon with a mixture of curiosity and condemnation. "The spitting image of a gypsy," the women whispered. "Look how dark he is, and his eyes are completely foreign." But Marussia paid no heed. She kissed her son's chubby cheeks, sang him songs, both village songs and the gypsy ones she had learned in the caravan. Andrei smiled a toothless smile, reached for her, and in those moments, Marusya's heart filled with such love it hurt. The only thing that clouded her happiness was her constant longing for Mikhail. She thought about him every day, every minute. Where was he now? Had he married that girl as his father wanted, or was he still looking for her? Did he know he had a son? 4 months had passed since Andrei's birth. Marusya helped her parents, took in sewing, embroidered towels for sale, and looked after the baby. Money was always tight, but they managed. It was a warm May day. Marusya was sitting on the porch with her son when Dunyasha came running, gasping for breath. "Marusya," she shouted from afar. "The gypsies, they've arrived again!" Marusya's heart stopped, then began to hammer so hard her vision darkened. "What?" she whispered. "The caravan?" Dunyasha flopped down next to her on the porch. "The same one, with Baron Andrei. They've set up camp in the same meadow as last year." Marusya instinctively held Andrei closer. The boy whimpered, sensing his mother's tension. "Mikhail, is he with them?" "I don't know," Dunyasha shook her head. "I only saw from afar. But the camp is big, lots of people. He's probably there." Marusya spent the rest of the day in a fever of excitement. What to do? Go to the camp? But what would she say, and what would Mikhail say when he saw her? Would he recognize his son? By evening she couldn't stand it any longer. She put Andrei in his cradle, asked her mother to watch him, and left the house. She walked the path to the meadow as if in a dream. Her heart pounded so hard she thought it would jump out of her chest. When the fires and painted wagons appeared, her legs slowed on their own. Marusya stood on the edge of the camp, peering into the faces of the Roma. She recognized some of them. There was Raisa, stirring something in a cauldron. There was old Isolde sitting by a fire. There were the children playing tag. And suddenly she saw him. Mikhail stood by his wagon talking to someone. He had hardly changed, just as handsome, proud, with long black hair tied back with a scarf, only his face was harsher. Shadows lay under his eyes, and in the eyes themselves was a deep melancholy. Marusya wanted to go up, call out to him, but her throat constricted. And then a woman emerged from the wagon, a young, beautiful gypsy in a bright red skirt and a white blouse. She said something to Mikhail, and he gave a short laugh devoid of its former joy. The woman touched his hand, and Marusya felt something snap inside her.
"He's married. Of course he's married. It's been almost 9 months since I left. What did I expect? That he would wait for me? Forever?"
Marusya turned and ran away, not watching where she was going. Tears blinded her. She stumbled but kept running. She ran home, burst into the hut, and collapsed on the bench, weeping.
"What happened?"
her mother asked, frightened.
"He's married,"
Marusya sobbed.
"Mikhail is married."
To another, her mother sighed and stroked her daughter's head. "And what did you expect, dear girl? Almost a year has passed. A man, he can't be alone. And probably by their customs his father forced him." Marusya knew her mother was right, but it didn't make it any easier. She cried all night, getting up only to feed the waking Andrei. In the morning, Dunyasha came with news. "Listen to what they're saying," she began. "The gypsies are looking for some woman with a child. The Baron himself is asking people. They say his son has gone crazy, has been searching for almost a year." Marusya raised her head. "What? Who is he looking for?" "They don't really know. They only say the Baron sent people to all the villages, tried to find her, and his son, Mikhail, almost lost his mind when that woman disappeared. Doesn't eat, doesn't sleep, just repeats her name." Marusya's heart leaped with hope. "And the woman? The one I saw yesterday by his wagon?" "What woman?" Dunyasha frowned. "Ah, the one in red? That's Mikhail's sister, Mikhailina. She was in another caravan last year, left with her husband, and now she's returned to stay." "Sister? Not his wife? His sister?" Marusya jumped up so sharply that Andrei, lying next to her on the blanket, cried out in fright. She picked him up and held him close. "He's looking for me," she whispered. Mikhail is looking for me. Well, go to him, Dunyasha exclaimed. What are you waiting for? But Marussia hesitated. What if the Baron drove her away again? What if he said she wasn't worthy of his son, and she had left on her own, left Mikhail without explaining the reasons? Would he forgive her for that? She spent the whole day in painful indecision, rocking Andrei in her arms. He slept, then demanded food, then simply looked at his mother with huge dark eyes, just like his father's. And in the evening, there was a knock on the door. Her father opened it. On the threshold stood Baron Andrei, tall and stern in a long black cloak. Good evening, he said. I'm looking for a girl named Marussia. They say she lives in this house. Marussia froze, holding Andrei. The boy sniffled, burying his nose in her shoulder. It's me, she said quietly, stepping out from behind the curtain. The Baron looked at her, then at the baby in her arms. His face wavered. Show me the child, he asked. Marussia carefully turned Andrei so the Baron could see his face. The boy opened his eyes, yawned, showing pink gums, and dozed off again. The Baron looked at his grandson for a long time in silence, then sighed heavily. The spitting image of Mikhail at that age, he said hoarsely. An exact copy. Why did you leave then, girl? Why didn't you tell me you were already carrying a child? I didn't know for sure then, Marussia admitted. I only suspected. And you yourself told me to leave. You said there would be a feud because of me, that Mikhail's blood would be on my hands. The Baron closed his eyes. I was a fool, he admitted. An old, stubborn fool. I thought I knew what was best for my son, and you should have seen what happened to him when he discovered you were gone. The Baron entered the hut without asking permission. Marussia's father and mother silently stepped aside. The old gypsy stopped in the middle of the room, looking at Marussia with the baby in her arms. Mikhail didn't leave his wagon for 3 days, the Baron began, his voice tired. He didn't eat, didn't drink, just kept saying your name. Then he started searching. He traveled to all the villages in the area, asked everyone, described what you looked like. Nothing, as if the earth had swallowed you. Marussia felt tears welling in her eyes. I thought it would be better. Better? The Baron smiled bitterly. My son lost his peace. He refused to marry Zoya. He quarreled with Baron Stepan. It almost came to a blood feud. I barely managed to persuade him. Explained that Mikhail had lost his head over some girl. Stepan spat and left. So now there's no alliance, no connection, all for the sake of my cleverness. He came closer and looked into the face of the sleeping Andrei. But when I see this child, I understand. Perhaps it's for the best. This is my grandson, my blood. And you, he looked up at Marussia. You were stronger than I thought. You left to protect him. You had the child alone. You survived.
I love Mikhail,
Marussia whispered.
All this time I've thought of no one but him.
And he of you, the Baron nodded. Every day, every night. Come with me. It's time for you to see each other. Marussia's heart sank. Now? But I'm not ready. And take Andrei. Mikhail must see his son. Marussia looked at her parents. Her mother nodded silently, and her father placed a hand on her shoulder for the first time in a long while. Go, daughter. If you love him, go. Marussia threw on a shawl, wrapped Andrei warmer, and followed the Baron. They walked silently along the dark road. The moon lit the way. An owl hooted somewhere in the distance. Marussia's soul was both terrified and joyful. When they approached the caravan, the Baron stopped. Go on your own, he said. He's at his wagon. I'll wait here. Marussia nodded and walked forward, pressing her son to her chest. Her legs trembled. Her heart pounded so hard she thought it would burst. She recognized the familiar wagon, saw a silhouette by the fire. Mikhail sat on the ground, his knees drawn up, his arms wrapped around them, staring into the flames. Even from the back she could see he had lost weight, how his shoulders were hunched. His violin lay nearby, abandoned. Marussia, Mikhail called quietly. He froze without turning around. Then he slowly raised his head. Do I imagine it, Or do I truly hear her voice? He rasped. Lord, I must have gone completely mad. It's not a dream. It's not a dream. Marussia stepped closer. It's me. I'm here. Mikhail jumped to his feet and turned sharply. Seeing her, he froze as if not believing his eyes. Then he took one step, then another, and suddenly rushed to her. He hugged her so tightly Marussia gasped. You're alive. He kissed her face, her hair, her hands. Where have you been? Where? I've looked everywhere. I thought I would die of grief. I'm sorry, Marussia cried. I'm so sorry. I thought it was the right thing to do. The right thing? Mikhail held her at arm's length, his face contorted with pain. You disappeared, just vanished. I didn't know if you were alive, if you were well, what had happened to you. Every night I woke up and prayed to God that you were safe. I left for you, Marussia sobbed. Your father said I would cause a feud, that people would die. I couldn't. Mikhail closed his eyes and pressed her to him even tighter. You're my fool, he whispered into her hair. A foolish, brave fool. You thought you were saving me, but you almost killed me. Without you, I was like a dead man. Andrei, squeezed between them, whimpered in dissatisfaction. Mikhail shuddered and pulled back. What's this? He looked at the bundle in Marussia's arms. It was then that Marussia carefully turned back the edge of the blanket, revealing the baby's face. This is Andrei, your son. Mikhail looked at the baby, and tears streamed down his face. He didn't even try to hide them. He held out his hands, and Marussia carefully transferred the child to him. Mikhail held his son, looking at him with such awe, as if he were holding the greatest treasure in the world. Andrei opened his eyes, huge, dark, just like his father's, and smiled a toothless smile.
My son, Mikhail whispered. I have a son.
He looked up at Marussia, and boundless love shone in his eyes. You gave birth to him alone. You survived everything alone. I'm sorry I wasn't there. It's not your fault, Marussia pressed against him. I'm the one who ruined everything. No, Mikhail shook his head. We were both wrong. I should have insisted, taken you away right then, not listened to my father, and you should have trusted me, told me everything. But it doesn't matter now. The important thing is that you're here, you and our son. Awkwardly, holding the child with one arm, he hugged Marussia with the other, and the three of them stood there, illuminated by the firelight, while Andrei slept peacefully in his father's arms. Marry me, Mikhail said suddenly, for real, according to all the customs, both mine and yours, so that no one will ever dare say you are not my wife. My father already understands. He brought you here himself, didn't he? And the caravan? Mikhail grinned. The caravan will get used to it. They have no choice now. You're the mother of my son, my heir. You are part of this family, whether the caravan wants it or not. Marussia smiled through her tears. Then yes, I will marry you. Mikhail kissed her gently, carefully, so as not to wake Andrei. The Baron emerged from the darkness. He silently approached them, looked at the scene, his son with his daughter-in-law and grandson in his arms, and smiled for the first time in a long time. All right, he said. Stop standing in the cold. It's bad for the child. Let's go to the wagon. Tomorrow we'll decide what to do next. We need to have a real wedding so everyone can see she is now one of us. They entered the wagon, and Mikhail carefully put his son to bed, surrounding him with pillows. Andrei sniffled and fell asleep again. Marussia sat down beside him, unable to take her eyes off the child. I missed so much, Mikhail said quietly, sitting down on the other side. The first smile, the first laugh, how he was born, how he opened his eyes. Nothing. Marussia took his hand. There's a whole life ahead. You'll catch up. The wedding was scheduled for a week later. During that time, the camp prepared for the celebration, and Marussia was surprised to find the attitude of the Roma towards her had changed. Now they looked at her not as an outsider, but as a woman who had proven her loyalty, who had left for the sake of her beloved, borne his child, and survived alone. Old Isolde herself brought her a wedding dress, red, embroidered with gold coins and beads. This was my mother's dress, she said. Wear it worthily. Raisa taught her how to braid her hair in the gypsy style, and the young girl showed her how to tie a married woman's headscarf correctly. Mikhail didn't leave Marussia and Andrei's side for a moment. He rocked his son, sang him gypsy songs, taught him to grab his finger, though the baby was still too small to understand. But most importantly, he made up for every lost minute, every second. "He looks like you," Marussia said, watching as Mikhail cradled Andrei. "No," Mikhail smiled. "He has your smile and your stubbornness. I can feel it." Marussia's parents also came to the camp, timid and uncertain. Her father was silent for a long time, looking at Mikhail, then extended his hand. "Take care of my daughter," he said hoarsely, "and my grandson, or I'll find you myself, gypsy or not." Mikhail shook his hand firmly. "I would give my life for both of them. I promise," her mother cried as she hugged Marussia. "Will you be happy in this nomadic life?" "I will be a mother," Marussia said firmly, "because I will be with the one I love." The wedding was something Marussia could never have dreamed of. The caravan turned into one big celebration. Bonfires burned, music played, people danced and sang until morning. Marussia was led around the fire, showered with flower petals and coins for luck. Mikhail held her hand, not letting go for a moment, as if afraid she would disappear again. When Baron Andrei tied their hands with a red ribbon according to gypsy custom, declaring them husband and wife before the entire caravan, Marussia felt she had finally found her place in the world. And then, when it was completely dark, the village priest, whom they had persuaded to come, married them according to the Orthodox rite, so that everything would be proper on Marussia's side as well. "Now you definitely won't go anywhere," Mikhail whispered when they were finally alone in the wagon. "Twice my wife, by their laws and by ours." Andrei slept in a cradle that Mikhail had built and painted with bright patterns himself. Marussia looked at her son, her husband, her new life that was just beginning, and couldn't believe her happiness. The months flew by quickly. Marussia finally took root in the caravan, learning everything a gypsy woman should know. She traded at fairs, told fortunes for simple-hearted peasant women, learned to read palms and cards, and helped treat horses with herbs. Andrei grew into a healthy, strong boy. At 6 months, he was already sitting up, grabbing everything within reach, and laughing heartily when his father played the violin for him. At 8 months, he took his first steps right into Mikhail's arms, who almost wept with happiness. "Look what a hero we're raising," he said proudly, tossing his son into the air. Andrei squealed with delight and reached out for more. But one day when Andrei was a year and 2 months old and the caravan had stopped in a big city, something happened that Marussia had always feared. She was walking through the market with a basket, choosing vegetables, when she heard a familiar voice. "Marussia? Marussia Petrovna, is that you?" Turning, Marussia saw Stepan, the son of the village elder who had once courted her. Tall, sturdy, with a light brown beard, he looked at her in amazement. "Jesus Christ, is it really you? We thought you were missing. Your parents said you left with the gypsies, but no one really believed it." "It's me, Stepan." Marussia nodded, instinctively taking a step back. Stepan looked her up and down. The bright gypsy skirt, the embroidered blouse, the necklace, the married woman's headscarf. "So it's true. You really did go off with a gypsy?" Contempt dripped from his voice. "Marussia, what have you done? You've disgraced your family, yourself. Your father walks with his head down, your mother cries. My parents know where I am and have accepted my choice." Marussia answered coldly. "That's none of your business, Stepan. None of my business." He raised his voice and people began to look. "I was courting you. I wanted to take you as my wife, and you chose to wander with a gypsy caravan." "I married for love," Marussia straightened up, looking him straight in the eye. "And I have a son. And I am happy. What do I wish for you?" She turned to leave, but Stepan grabbed her arm.
"Let go of me!"
Marussia pulled away.
"Give up this foolishness," Stepan hissed. "Come home before it's too late.
Gypsies, they're temporary people. Today he's with you, tomorrow he'll leave. What will you do then? But he won't leave.
A cold voice spoke from behind Stepan. Mikhail had appeared as if from nowhere. He was a head taller than Stepan, broader in the shoulders, and dangerous lights danced in his dark eyes. "Take your hands off my wife," he said quietly, yet with such force that Stepan instinctively stepped back. "Your wife?" Stepan snorted contemptuously, though Marussia noticed him swallow nervously. "What kind of wife is she to you? You had your fun with the girl, and you'll drop her as soon as you get bored." Mikhail stepped forward, and Marussia hurried to stand between them. "Mikhail, don't. He's not worth it. Listen to your wife, Gypsy," Stepan smirked, gaining courage. "And then, when you've had your fill, you'll forget her, like a forgotten violin tune." At that, Mikhail lost his composure. In one quick movement, he grabbed Stepan by the collar and pulled him close. "One more word about my wife," he whispered, "and I'll make you forget how to speak. We are married, by your laws and by ours. We have a son, and if you or anyone else dares to insult her, you will regret it." He pushed Stepan away. Stepan staggered, almost falling. A crowd had already gathered. Some looked at Marussia with sympathy, others with judgment. "Let's go." Mikhail took Marussia's hand and led her away from the market. Only when they were further away did Marussia feel her legs shaking. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I've caused trouble again." Mikhail stopped and turned her to face him. "No trouble. Do you hear me? Let the whole world say whatever it wants. Only one thing is important to me. You are with me. You and Andrei. The rest is nothing." He kissed her, not paying attention to the passers-by, and Marussia pressed against him, feeling the fear recede. After the encounter with Stepan, Marussia became more cautious, trying not to walk around the city alone, staying closer to the caravan. Mikhail noticed her anxiety but said nothing. He simply took her with him more often when he went trading, and Andrei stayed with Isolde or Raisa. The boy was growing before their eyes. At 1.5 years, he was already running between the wagons, playing with the gypsy children, laughing and chattering in 2 languages at once, now in Russian, now inserting gypsy words he picked up from the adults. "Play! Play!" he shouted when Mikhail took out his violin. His father would sit him on his lap and let him touch the strings. Andrei would run his small hand over the bow, producing screeching sounds, and laugh joyfully. "He'll be a musician," Isolde said. "He has a feel for the instrument." Marussia looked at them, her husband and her son, and her heart overflowed with love.
This is it. This is my happiness. This is what I went through all the fear, the loneliness, the condemnation for. Another year passed.
Andrei was already 2.5 when Marussia realized she was pregnant again. This time, she wasn't afraid to tell Mikhail. They were lying in the wagon after a long day. Andrei was sleeping in his small bed in the corner, and Marussia whispered, "We're going to have another baby." Mikhail froze, then abruptly rose on his elbows, peering into her face in the twilight. "Truly?" Such happiness sounded in his voice that Marussia smiled. "Truly. It will be born in the spring." Mikhail pressed her to him, kissed her face, her hair, whispered something in his language. Prayers, gratitude, vows. "I love you so much," he said. "So much. You've given me all of yourself. A son, now another child. I am the happiest person in the world." When Andrei found out he would have a brother or sister, he didn't understand at first. Then he was offended. "No!" He stomped his foot. "Andriusha alone." But Isolde laughed and took her grandson in her arms. "You will be a big brother, big and strong. You will protect the baby, teach it everything. It's a great honor." Andrei thought about it, then nodded importantly. "I will protect." The pregnancy was easier than the first. Marussia already knew what to expect, and life in the caravan had toughened her. She worked almost until the very birth, helped the women, traded at fairs. Only in the last month did Mikhail categorically forbid her to leave the camp unless absolutely necessary. "You're doing too much," he grumbled. Rest. Take care of yourself and the child. In March, when the snow had just begun to melt and the ground was still cold, Marussia went into labor. Mikhail was kicked out of the wagon. That was the tradition. Men were not allowed to be present at births. He sat by the fire, nervously fiddling with his violin, jumping at every sound. "Calm down," Baron Andrei told him. "Marussia is strong. She'll manage." The labor lasted all night. Mikhail didn't sleep, listening to his wife's cries, and with every cry he wanted to rush in there, but old Isolde strictly ordered him to sit and not interfere. And in the morning, when the first rays of sun touched the ground, a thin infant's cry was heard. Isolde emerged from the wagon, wiping her hands. "A daughter," she said, smiling. "You have a daughter, Mikhail. A beauty." Mikhail rushed inside. Marussia lay there, pale and exhausted, but alive. And next to her, wrapped in a white blanket, lay a tiny girl with a shock of black hair. "Meet her," Marussia whispered. "This is our Maria." Mikhail took his daughter in his arms, so small, so weightless, and cried. 2 tears rolled down his cheeks onto the baby's face. "Maria," he repeated. "Masha, my daughter." Andrei, who had finally been let in, ran to the bed and stood on tiptoe, trying to see his sister. "Small," he said, amazed. "Very small." "You were like that too," Marussia smiled. "And now you're a big brother. Will you protect little Masha?" Andrei nodded seriously and gently touched his sister's tiny hand. Maria grabbed his finger and the boy laughed in delight. "She's holding me, Mama. She's holding me." Mikhail looked at this picture, his wife, his son, his daughter, and understood that this was true wealth. Not gold, not horses, not power in the caravan, but these people, his family. A few months passed. Masha grew into a calm child who hardly cried. Andrei adored his sister, constantly bringing her flowers, stones, all sorts of treasures he found. "Look, Masha, how pretty." He would show her his latest find, and the girl would look seriously, then try to put it in her mouth. The caravan welcomed Masha with joy. She was the first girl born into the Baron's clan in 3 years. Everyone spoiled her, made her dresses, embroidered bonnets, gave her toys. Marussia watched Mikhail rock his daughter, singing a lullaby, and thought, "This is the life I dreamed of." Yes, it's difficult, full of deprivation sometimes, but it's real, it's living, it's full of love. One evening when the children were already asleep, Mikhail and Marussia sat by the fire. He played the violin quietly so as not to wake the kids, and she embroidered a new shirt for Andrei. "What are you thinking about?" Mikhail asked, noticing his wife's thoughtful gaze. She confessed how everything had changed. 3 years ago I was an ordinary country girl dreaming of something more, and now I'm the mother of 2, the Baron's wife. Mikhail grinned. "And the most beautiful woman in the caravan. I don't regret anything," Marussia said firmly. "Not even those terrible months we were apart. Everything we went through made us stronger. It made our love stronger." Mikhail put down the violin and hugged her. "You know what's the most amazing thing?" he whispered. "You came into my life by accident. I was just playing the violin and you heard the music, and from that moment everything changed. You became my home, Marussia. Wherever we are, on the road, in the camp, anywhere. If you are near, I am home." Marussia turned to him, cupped his face in her palms. "And you are my home, my world, everything I need." They kissed, long and tender, while the fire crackled, the stars shone in the sky, and a gypsy guitar played somewhere in the distance. It seemed life had finally settled into a good rhythm. The children grew healthy, the caravan prospered. Marussia was happy, but fate was preparing another test. It happened on a hot August day. The caravan was camped by a large river near a city. The men were trading horses. The women were telling fortunes at the market. The children were splashing in the water under the supervision of their elders. Marussia and Mikhail were in the city selling embroidered scarves and belts. Andrei and Masha were left with Isolde. The old gypsy adored her grandchildren and often looked after them. When they returned in the evening, the camp met them with a strange silence. Usually, at this time, children were running around, women were cooking dinner, men were sitting around fires. But now, everyone was gathered in one place, speaking excitedly, interrupting each other. Marusia's heart sank. "What happened?" she cried, rushing towards the crowd. Isolde sat on the ground, holding her head. Raisa hugged her shoulders, saying something comforting. Seeing Marusia, the old gypsy raised her tear-stained face. "Forgive me," she croaked. "Forgive me, I looked away for just a minute." "Where are the children?" Marusia grabbed her by the shoulders. "Where are Andre and Masha?" "Masha is sleeping in the wagon, right here," Raisa said quickly. "But Andre, he's disappeared." The world turned upside down. Marusia felt the ground give way beneath her, but Mikhail caught her. "How did he disappear?" His voice was terribly calm. "Explain properly," Isolde sobbed. "The children were playing by the river. I was watching them, I swear. But a woman came and asked me to tell a fortune urgently. I stepped away for just a short time, literally 5 minutes. When I returned, Andre was gone. The other children said he ran after a butterfly into the woods." "How long ago?" Mikhail demanded. 2 hours, Baron Andre replied, appearing from the crowd. "We've already searched the river bank, the nearest forest. We shouted, we looked. He's nowhere." Marusia screamed, a cry of horror, of despair. Her 3-year-old son was somewhere alone in the woods. Maybe he fell, maybe he was hurt, or maybe... She didn't even want to think of the worst. "I'm going to look." Mikhail was already heading towards the forest. "We're all going," said the Baron. "Let's split into groups, comb everything, check every bush." Marusia wanted to run with them, but Raisa held her back. "Masha needs you. She'll wake up, she'll cry. The men will find Andre. They'll find him, I'm sure." But Marusia couldn't just sit still. She rushed around the camp, looked into every wagon, under every cart. She shouted her son's name until she was hoarse. Maybe he came back on his own. Maybe he was hiding somewhere. It grew dark. The men returned with torches, continuing the search in the dark. Marusia stood on the edge of the camp, peering into the black forest, and prayed to all the saints. Just let him be alive. Just let them find him. Mikhail appeared around midnight, dirty, his face scratched, exhausted. "Nothing," he said, and his voice broke. "He's nowhere." Marusia rushed to him, and they hugged, both sobbing. Their boy, their Andriusha, was somewhere in the dark, alone and frightened. "We'll search until morning," the Baron said. "I'll send people to the city, let them ask around. Maybe someone saw something." Marusia didn't sleep all night. She sat by the fire, rocking the awakened Masha, who whimpered, sensing her mother's anxiety. And at dawn, something happened that no one expected. At the edge of the camp appeared Stepan, the same one Marusia had met at the market 2 years before. With him were 3 other men, and between them, holding Stepan's hand, walked Andre. "Mama!" the boy shouted and rushed to Marusia. She grabbed her son, pressed him to her, kissed his dirty face, his hair, his hands, unable to believe he was alive, that he was here. "Where were you? What happened?" "I got lost," Andre sobbed. "I was scared. And then this uncle found me." Marusia looked up at Stepan. He stood there, shifting awkwardly from foot to foot. "We were fishing on the river," he explained. "We heard crying, found him in the forest, frightened. He asked where he was from. He said something about a gypsy camp. Well, I brought him here." Mikhail approached Stepan. He tensed, clearly expecting a conflict, but Mikhail extended his hand. "Thank you," he said. "You saved my son. I am in your debt." Stepan looked surprised at the outstretched hand, then shook it uncertainly. "Well, anyone would have done the same. The child is not just anyone," Baron Andre intervened, coming closer. "After that conversation at the market, you could have passed by, pretended you didn't see. But you brought the boy home. That is worth a lot." He took out his wallet, but Stepan waved his hands. "Don't need money." "I didn't do it for that." "Then at least eat with us," suggested Isolde, who had calmed down now that she saw Andre was safe. "We were just about to have breakfast." Stepan hesitated, but his comrades were already looking at the camp with interest. Eventually he nodded. "All right, we'll sit for a while." The gypsies quickly laid out a meal by the fire, brought bread, cheese, dried meat, and poured wine. Stepan and his companions sat down, at first holding themselves warily but gradually relaxing. Mikhail took out his violin and played, and one of Stepan's men whistled in admiration. "That skill! I could never do that." Marussia sat without letting Andrei out of her arms. The boy had already calmed down, chewing bread with honey and telling them about his adventures. How he ran after a beautiful butterfly, how he got lost, how he cried and called for his mother, then fell asleep under a tree and woke up when he heard the fishermen's voices. "Never again, do you hear? Never run off alone," Marussia said sternly, but immediately kissed her son. "I almost went out of my mind. Sorry, Mama." Andrei hugged her neck. "I won't do it anymore." Stepan watched them, and the expression on his face gradually changed. The judgment and disdain from before were gone. He saw a real family, loving, caring, happy despite all the difficulties. "Marussia," he called quietly when she came over to pour him more wine. She looked at him questioningly. "I was wrong then at the market," Stepan admitted. "I said nasty things, judged you. But I see now, you are truly happy. That's a rare thing." Marussia sat down next to him. "I'm not angry, Stepan. You saved my son. That's more important than all words. Your husband." Stepan nodded towards Mikhail, who was playing the violin surrounded by children. "He's a good man. You can see he loves you. And the children." "He does," Marussia confirmed, and her eyes shone. "With all his heart. As I love him." Stepan sighed. "So you chose right. I still haven't married. I'm looking for the right bride." He grinned. "Maybe I should marry a gypsy too?" Marussia laughed, and the tension finally dissipated. They talked a little more, and then Stepan got up, ready to leave. "If you need anything," he said, "goodbye. Send word through your parents. I'll help as much as I can."
"Thank you."
Marussia hugged him in a friendly manner. "For everything, for finding Andriusha, for understanding." When Stepan and his comrades had left, the caravan breathed a sigh of relief. The crisis was over. The boy was home. Everything had turned out all right. Marussia didn't let Andrei out of her sight all day. Mikhail also kept coming over, touching his son's head, his shoulders, as if checking that he was really here, that it wasn't a dream. In the evening, when both children were finally asleep, Andrei in his mother's arms, Masha in her cradle, Mikhail and Marussia stepped out of the wagon to get some air. "I thought I'd go crazy," Mikhail admitted, hugging his wife. "When I was looking for him in the forest and couldn't find him, I had such terrible thoughts."
"I know,"
Marussia whispered.
"I did too. But everything is fine. He's alive, he's healthy. That's the main thing." They stood looking at the stars, thanking fate that the trial had ended safely. "You know what I realized,"
Mikhail said. "When we met 4 years ago, I thought fate had given me just a beautiful girl. But it gave me so much more. A family, a home, a meaning to life. You made me a real person, Marussia. Before you, I just existed. Now I live." Marussia turned to him, took his face in her hands. "And you changed my life. You showed me the world. You gave me love, children, the freedom to be myself. We saved each other, Mikhail." They kissed for a long time, tenderly, like the first time 4 years ago, when everything was just beginning. And in the morning the caravan set off again. The wagons lined up in a long chain. The horses snorted. The children ran nearby, laughing and shouting. Mikhail drove their wagon. Marussia sat beside him with Masha in her arms, and Andrei stood between them, holding on to his father's shoulder. "Papa, where are we going?" the boy asked. "Forward, son," Mikhail smiled. "Always just forward. The road is calling." Marussia looked at her husband, at her children, at the endless road ahead. Yes, life in the caravan was not easy. Yes, people often condemned them, didn't understand. But here, in this painted wagon, next to the person she loved and their children, she was truly happy. The caravan moved slowly along the dusty road, leaving another village behind. New places, new meetings, new stories lay ahead. And for now, Mikhail's violin played, the gypsies sang, and above it all stretched a clear blue sky as endless as their love. Marussia took her husband's hand and squeezed it tightly. He turned and smiled at her, that very smile that had taken her breath away 4 years ago.
I love you, she whispered. And I love you, Mikhail replied. I will always love you, until my last breath.
And the caravan rolled on, carrying them into a new life, full of adventure, hardship, and boundless happiness.